Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast. The award-winning, thanks to Megan, our producer, and Dan Sostek and Nebby Asias, who's now an athletic director at Thurgood Marshall Academy out in Washington, D.C., and Eric Epler and the whole team. Dan Sostek, you were there yesterday. You picked up our championship belts.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we're going against the big boys too, right? We're in Class 1, so we're in the same class as the Inquirer and Post Gazette and LMP, and I mean, we got third place, but first place was also a PennLive podcast, so and that's a pretty good one as well too. We advise you all to listen to that one too, but pretty good for our first foray into doing this.
We don't even really know what we're doing. We're just talking. We don't have a subject for today's podcast, which usually ends up being
We're talking about football.
We're just going to talk about football. We got playoffs coming up tomorrow night. That's big, obviously. And this weekend we really get it rolling. It's kind of like the slow roll into playoffs. Because we have a good majority of our playoff teams actually aren't playing this week. They get a bye week. But I was looking around, Dan, as we get ready to go into these playoffs and just looking across the state, and we every year I think back how we do like a all PA team, and then we do like the preseason all PA team, and then you look back and a lot of things factor into that: who you're playing, what kind of games you're playing in, and obviously numbers. But we talked about it, Dan. Pennsylvania doesn't really have a real leaderboard for statistics, but there are a number of teams that do put their stats on Max Preps, and there's some guys who've had some monster seasons locally and statewide. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about some of these guys because I've watched a lot of their films and stuff like that, and been writing their name in our weekly like player of the week polls for the state and stuff like that. But just for you locally or statewide or anybody jumping off, Dan, anybody you want to give a tip of the cap to, you want to talk about had a big year that you can think of?
Well, Epp and I already did on Tuesday. We talked about the guys who didn't make the playoffs, so I'll focus more on guys that are headed into one last ride, I guess, so to speak. For me, I one of the teams that's in action this week. I just think I feel like we talk about this team a lot, but it's a pretty special group up there in Elliottsburg, and I just think Marcus Quaker is probably one of the better all-around leaders that in the area that's really kind of headed that group that has really put together one of the best runs in West Perry football history. And he does it in different ways. He's a quarterback, but he does it more with his legs than his arm. He can throw the ball, but he's such a dangerous weapon with his legs. But I think more than how he throws or how he runs, I think he really had that group all the way back to last year kind of believing in themselves. And it's been cool to watch them play. Now, if I cover the game on Friday, I don't know if I'll be able to tweet about what they're playing because AT&T and Elliottsburg don't match up so well. But regardless, no matter how far it goes, you're always in a tough bracket there when Y missing is staring you right in the face at the end. But no matter how that season ends, I think Quaker and Goodling and the rest of those guys out there have a lot to be proud of for what they've accomplished.
You talk about Marcus Quaker, and you start off with quarterbacks there. Obviously, we have another one in the area, two more in the area, really. Alex Irby, who set pretty much every passing record now in state history. I mean, he's got the passing yardage record. He's got the passing touchdowns record. If you look on Max Preps, you won't see him there, Dan, because they don't put their stats on Max Preps. But he's up around, I think, 2,900 yards. Tom DeMartini texted us today. And really the number one guy on Max Preps, Stone Saunders from Bishop McDevitt, who was the Gatorade Player of the Year last year, and a couple other, sites Player of the Year. He has over 2,500 yards, 44 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So we've been blessed here in Central Pennsylvania. Those are 3 guys right there. I mean, he has some other good quarterbacks too. Sean Lee's really balling right now. But Dan, I'm looking at the Max Preps, like top 10 for passing yards.
Yeah.
And there are guys like that people wouldn't guess. Okay, like Braylon Wagner, Red Bank Valley. He's up there right now, second on that list. 2,500 yards, 39 touchdowns, 3 interceptions.
Isn't Derek Gibney on that list?
Derek Gibney's on that list from Susquehanna. He's in the top 10.
We talked about him on Tuesday. I mean,
Small school,
yep.
number 9. He's a big kid. He's an interesting guy to me, Dan. Like, I don't know if he's a quarterback at the next level, but he's 6'4", he's 225. He can throw it a little bit. He's got 2,400 yards passing, 27 touchdowns. So he's interesting. That's a good one. Javen Peel is an interesting kid to me. He's a freshman, Western Beaver, 2,433 yards, 27 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. I think he's one of those kids that, like, for the future, we're going to be seeing a lot from that kid. But it's just interesting. Tyler Biggins, shout out to him. We don't ever talk. This is the PA High School Football Report. We don't talk a lot about West Branch football. I'll be honest with you, I don't even know where West Branch is in Marsdale. I'm from South Carolina.
I've lived in Pennsylvania for 27 years of my life. I have no idea where that is.
Tyler Biggins has 2,487 yards, 20 touchdowns, 13 years. He can run it too, Dan, because he's made multiple times onto our weekly top guys list. Quadir Stribling down there, he's at 15 from Sarah Catholic with over 2,200 yards. He's had a heck of a year. Tyler G just accounted for over 500 yards for Little Stock Township.
How about sitting there at number 19, Tommy Hunsaker, who, for Wilson's quarterback has been really good for them the last couple of years. They put up 30 something on
Manheim Township.
Yeah,
makes you wonder,
Wilson is a team I feel like you never really want to be facing at the end of the year, right? That one of the best coach teams in the district.
It's been a down year for them, but if you watch them, they've gotten better as the year goes on. So
right ahead of Keith Oates,
Otis.
Oh my God, I can't believe I did that.
So here's a neat stat about Keith Otis, guys. If you look on his Max Press statewide leaders, 2,064 yards, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, Dan.
Yeah.
How many tackles do we think he's got?
I think he's up to, I think it was 100 something.
Let's see what they got on Max Preps right now. Guys, like I said, we're just freelancing here. We're just flowing. We want to talk about some guys who've had really good years. Here's one.
He's got
they got him in 103 tackles. This guy's throwing for over 2,000 yards as a quarterback, buckling the chin strap, going to middle linebacker, and he's got over 100 tackles.
Yeah,
that's crazy to me.
He's a real no-nonsense kid, too. I mean, some of the kids you talk to, they're smiling, laughing after games. Keith Otis looks like he still wants to go tackle some people after the football game. So,
now, how about this, Dan? All the Division I running backs we have in the state, you look at the Max Preps leaderboard for rushing.
Yep.
Number 1, Alex Aschenbach. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. From Williams Valley, 2,338 yards. 25 touchdowns. Number 2, Luke Stevanowski from Minersville, 2,077 yards, 31 touchdowns. Number 3, Carlo Bazzato from Riverview. He's got 2,070 yards, 17 touchdowns. 4, Jake Williams. That's Elko. Big spring plays them Friday night for our people here in.
Do you think Jake Williams is at and he talks with Tommy Mealy about any playoff advice?
Intel?
Or just in general, I mean, Tommy Mealy is a state champion
running back.
He was a pretty good running back in his own right. I think he's probably getting some good advice from Tommy as well.
That's the neat thing about Tommy Mealy, who was Bishop McDevitt's athletic director. He went over to Elko. He won the state championship playing running back for Bishop McDevitt. Meanwhile, I don't think Deshaun McCoy won a state championship there, and I don't think Ricky Waters won a state championship there.
Everyone tells you Tommy was a gamer. He was a real gamer at running back. So
those top 4, man.
Look at number 8 too. Look at number 8.
Cole Bartram. Yeah, Northern High School. He had the 500-yard game. He's got 1,848 yards. And I'm sure he has well over 100 tackles.
Unsurprisingly, and it's no insult to Cole, he's got the lowest yards per carry of anyone in the top 10 because he probably has 100 more carries than everyone else.
I'm not going to read off every kid's stat line. I'll tell you, all of these kids have over 1,500 yards rushing, and they're all pretty unheralded. I don't think you have anybody here with a big offer. You ready? Raymond Holman from Marsville. DeJour Hollingsworth, who is he's a little powder keg man out at Cathedral Prep. I think you'll hear more about him now that the playoffs are going. I've watched a lot of his film. Evan Wright from Mars is 13th right now on Max Prep's leaderboards. Boyd Scarbeck, from Pope John Paul II, which, our guy Evan Wheaton, who we brought in, seems to really think they might have a shot to give Dev a little bit of a challenge here in the playoffs. And then Tucker Teach from Sealands Grove's 11th, Aaron Crosley from Wyoming Area's 10th, Kendall Cottrell from Bristol's 9th. And you got Cole, you got Ethan Knox, who broke Derrick Henry's record last year. And Matt Machalik from Palmerton, their quarterback, is 5th with over 1,900 yards. He's the only guy that's committed. I believe he's a Lehigh commit as an athlete. So, Braxton Brown, I got him too. Braxton Brown.
The question is, where do you think Jared Porter would be? I mean, we don't have his statistics, unfortunately, but I think he's got some offers.
Yeah, I think he probably had over. I think he's probably in that 1,400, 1,500 yard range too.
Yep.
So I think he would be up there. But if you look at what's just on Max Preps, it's a pretty unheralded group, which to me is just neat because you don't see a lot of big offers there, but you see a lot of really good high school football players. This is being the PA High School Football Report podcast. It's good to get their names out there because they've had heck of a years as we get ready to turn the page. Receiving, Aaron Enterline is number 1 overall yards receiving with over 1,200 yards. Jamari Curlett is a kid from Northeast who keeps popping up. And then it's kind of the same, Dan. Look, Blake Pisarcik, Brockway is number 3 in the state. Jasper Sheps, who's really underrated kid that does a lot of stuff for Juniata. We talked about is 4. Joey Wilkinson from Hanover is 5. A kid I love, Jalen Andrews, Dan. You need to go watch his film. Loyal Sock Township. He's about 6'3", probably about 185. He can run like a deer. You can catch it. He's right now at 6 on the Smash Prep state leaderboard. But again, it's kind of an unheralded group till you get to 10 with the big dog Rico Scott, who's from Bishop McDevitt and is a Alabama commit, right? I mean, anything else sticking out there to you?
Yeah, I mean, Ian Olson, I believe he's the brother of Caden Olson,
yes.
Former quarterback, who I think I could be wrong, but I believe their dad is a Mechanicsburg area high school graduate. So some mid-pen ties there.
Mason Scott, which Evan Wheaton can tell you, the kid from Springford who's 9th, man, he is a burner. And he's got some late offers coming on. That kid's special. Go watch his film. Mason Scott from Springford. He's right at 1,000 yards receiving.
Yeah, and then Chase Reagan's right up there too, who's I think has had a really good senior year, kind of taken on more responsibility. It's been a little different than Tyshawn Russell's explosion last year, which is still one of the crazier from 0 to 60 bursts on the scene as a senior I've ever seen. But Chase Reagan's had a really big explosion this year. And you look at a guy like Brecken Swope, who, I mean, we know the type of athlete Brecken Swope is. He's a state-level pole vaulter who he's really come on as a wide receiver. East Bend's got 2 wide receivers in the top 50 with Trey Good there as well. Definitely some good football players.
We got Mateo Crummels on here, which I know Central Dolphin. You guys haven't seen his film, go watch it. Mateo Crummels right now on the Max Press leaderboard. He's 27th in the state. Really explosive guy. Like him a lot. The 2 LL kids, Landon Kennel, the Manheim Township receiver, and then Aaron Enterline, who's number 1 on this leaderboard.
Both have 22 touchdowns.
Both have 22 touchdowns. This is crazy. Finishing up on wide receivers, they're just looking at the list real quick. Peter Gonzalez is a Penn State commit. He's like 18th in the state right now on this leaderboard. And again, this is just teams that are reporting to Max Preps. There may be some other teams out there. Some other players who don't have unfortunately their coaches haven't, reported their stats anywhere. We've had that episode already, Dan, but tackles real quick. We'll just switch over to defense real quick, Dan. Putting kids' names out there. We got signing day coming up, Dan, in just over a month, December the 20th, I believe, right?
Yeah. I'm not personally a huge fan in using tackles to determine how good a defense is, but when you have a certain amount, it tells you something. But when I do the defensive stats every week, it does kind of seem like a lot of times it's just, the more plays you're playing on defense, the higher the stats are. Whereas, the quicker you get off the field, the easier you do. But some of these numbers are pretty preposterous.
Well, and also, what we got to do is say Sam Shipley from the Shannon Valley is at number 1 right now, and they have him as a combined 166 tackles, which is crazy. But at number 2 on this list is one of the greatest high school names you'll ever have, is Stud Campbell from
Yeah, I
Columbia.
mean, that sounds like a name from a script or something.
I
But
want to do an all names team, Dan. We got Stud Campbell. We got a kid named Bricks Rawls who's a running back.
Jacob Ness has been he's quietly put together a really good year for Trinity at linebacker.
Yeah, where's he at? Where's he at on this
He's
list?
number 20. He's number 24 in the state.
Very, very good player. Very good player.
Cole Bartram behind him.
It's crazy because this is another one where, like, if you look at this list, and this tells you something too. I think your big name college guys aren't there. Devontae Dean's number 3 from Carlington. Elliot Bouchot, number 4 from Maplewood. Chad Beller Jr. from Catasauqua. He's had a heck of a year. He's made it on our player of the week list a couple times. You know, there's no big name offers there. Luke Schaefer is a kid from Northern Lebanon. You know, they've had some rough times. He's got 118 tackles. He's at number 12. He's a good kid, man. He's a good football player. I've been following him for 2 or 3 years, so good to see him there. Just interesting to me. Like, if you look at all the leaders, Dan.
Well, do you know who leads? You remember last week when I joked about who leads the Mid-Penn in sacks?
Yeah.
He doesn't just lead the Mid-Penn in sacks. He leads the state in sacks per Max Preps. Parker Funk.
Now Parker Funk's pushing. We got to go watch his film some more, just to see what he's up to. But yeah, he's
16 sacks on the year there. So,
yeah. So, and again, this is another group. Like, you don't see the big names there, but again, we do know that there are some teams that just aren't reporting. But Maxim Johnson there from Lime Mountain, who I think is a good football player, is at 9, with 10.5, and Jet France with 10.
Yeah, Jet France is a guy that I feel like is going to find a way to make an impact somewhere at the next level. I don't know what type of what exact level he's going to end up at, but he's just a guy that always pops every time I watch Central Dauphin.
I want to see these Central Catholic defensive stats on here, and I want to see Imhotep on here, with the big Zahir Mathis, who just put out his I don't know if you saw that, damn it. Zahir Mathis just put out his top 5, and Penn State didn't make the cut there.
Yeah. Jasir Whittington's 41st with 7 sacks. The from Imhotep as well. So a lot of
Zahir, which he's not on this list, but Ohio State, Texas, South Carolina, Florida State, Tennessee. If you guys haven't checked him out, 6'6", 220-pound freak of nature defensive end in Imhotep. Yeah. I was cutting you off, Dan. What'd you say?
Just saw that Jasir Whittington's on there though. Mathis isn't, but
Jasir is a. Jasir has a career arc, kind of like Riley Rebel. Dan, he was as a sophomore, he was a linebacker. Yeah, it's funny because when I do the player rankings, I project them and I put it in there. I project them as what I think they'll be in college. So I turn on the Imhotep film, and here's this pudgy middle linebacker running around. I'm like, oh, he's a defensive tackle. So he messaged me. He's like, Mr. Linder, why did you put me at defensive tackle? I was like, I think that's where you'll play, but go ask your coach. Always follow what your coach says. And sure enough, here he is. So it always makes me feel good to have Jasir. See Jasir doing well.
I know we make fun of Pitt a lot on here. you like get your jokes off, but you can see why he committed to play for Charlie Partridge and the University of Pittsburgh there, because they've had a lot of success with those type of defensive tackles there. Kalijah Cansey, Aaron Donald. He's definitely in that type of mold where it's not the size, right? It's the kind of quickness, the get off on the line, and the ability to kind of use leverage.
I'm looking at the interceptions list real quick, and again, sort of an unheralded list. Jaden Randall's number 1 with 8. Will from Abington, Will Schroeder from Tawando's number 2. He's tied with 8. He's from Tawanda. Pace Prosser from Berlin Brothers Valley. He's their quarterback. He puts up pretty good numbers playing quarterback, and he's got 7 interceptions. And
Quincy Brandon on Harrisburg, right up there with 6. He's been really impressive to me on both sides of the ball this year, because he's become more of their possession wide receiver too. Like obviously Elias Koch he's where the bread's buttered when they need a big, 15, 20-yard play. But on 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s, 2nd and 8, they're throwing screen passes to Quincy Brandon and letting him make people miss. He's really explosive with the ball. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a guy that, after the season ends, starts picking up some college offers, some higher level college offers. He's just a really good football player.
Matt Michalik's there from Palmerton, their quarterback. He's also plays free safety. He's got 7 interceptions. He's up there near the top. Another kid I wanted to mention is down the list a little bit here is Meyer Crosby from Greensburg Central Catholic. Another kid that, every time he's got 6 interceptions. Every time we do player of the week, this kid is returning interceptions for touchdowns. He's returning punts for touchdowns, kicks. He's catching them. He's rushing them. I think one game he had scored 6 different ways. It's insane. So he's a fun guy to keep an eye on. But actually, I wanted to bring us into that and just talk about, get some guys' names from around the state on here. Maybe we haven't talked about, and it's fun, I think, when you really think about, when you look at player rankings and you rank guys from height, weight, speed, and also production. But then you go back and you look at the end of the year and you say, some of these guys are just really good high school football players, and there's a spot for them somewhere too. But I think that's really neat to get some of those guys out there. And some of those guys deserve that tip of the cap.
Yeah, and I think the rule of thumb with stats, right, is that it's still game film over everything, but stats can help you it can point you in the direction of whose huddle you need to look at, right? Because we're probably not watching Maxime Johnson's huddle page with a frequency if has 1 sack on the year and is still just as productive and just as athletic, right? It kind of points you in the right direction to kind of look at these guys and say, hey, this guy's pretty good.
So we talked about those guys. We dropped their names. It's playoff time, Dan. How you feeling about these playoffs? Excited? You ready to go?
It's weird. It feels like this week there's with the buys and the 6A being off, it feels like it's kind of it's almost like it's kind of like the first round of the NFL playoffs, right? Where you're kind of waiting on the big boys to get going, but you might get the more competitive games this week than in the future weeks. There's some good games. I'm interested to see. I think one of the more interesting matchups is Lower Dauphin Ephrata. At Ephrata. I think Lower Dauphin's a team that against most of these teams in this 5A bracket, I think they're a team that can make games difficult. That they can kind of shorten the game up, get the game to the final possession, or get the game to the final drive or whatever, and have a 21-16 game late. And that's a game I'm looking forward to seeing the result of, because I think Josh Braley's done a really good job with that group.
Josh Braley has. We talked about that. You wouldn't have picked him to be 6-4 now.
Yeah.
It was considering Ty Milheim's only played the last 2 games, which it'd be interesting to see if they get him involved more in offense. I know he was still not fully there, but I know he was playing pretty well in defense. So that'll be interesting to see. You talk about effort Sam McCracken at quarterback. He's put up some numbers. Quentin Faust, linebacker, wide receiver kid. They got some ball players at effort. So, but again, Lower Dauphin scrappy. I think Epler, and our picks had Lower Dauphin plus 11, so he's got them as the underdog. But I think I took Lower Dauphin. I think it was an effort to win, but I took Lower Dauphin to cover that.
That's what I did too.
Exeter Township Hershey's going to be and again, guys, I know this is the PA football report. We're kind of now focusing a little bit on our Central PA teams here as we get ready to close it out. But Exeter Township at Hershey, I think it's going to be really interesting. Jaden Zandier, sure I'm saying his name wrong. His brother, Zach Zandier, plays tight end. I'm sure I butchered their last names. You want to take a shot at that, Dan?
Yeah, I think you're close. You're close enough.
Jaden's running the heck out the ball, 170 something yards a game and getting 8 or 9 tackles. He's made that player to list. But Hershey's a little bit more, they got the big running back.
They've been kind of hard for me to peg a little bit. I'm actually about to go watch their boys soccer team later tonight play for probably after release. But yeah, I mean, they've been a hard team to kind of peg down for me this year, because there have been times where they've looked great. I think their win against Milton Hershey was probably the best they've played all year. It was 33-22 win, but that game was not as close as that final score indicated.
I think a lot of times as journalists and just as fans or anything, you look at a game and you say, Team A is better than Team B or whatever. Well, Hershey, I think the thing with them is you never really know till you get into the game, like what you're saying, because I think with them, there's so much to rise on. If they can get kind of rolling downhill a little
They
bit.
can get ahead. They're not a team that I think can come from behind, but I think if their game script is following what they want, because I mean, you look at the Dallastown game. I mean, Dallastown's 5-5 on the year, but that's a team with a lot of talent. Um, they beat them in overtime by one of the rare two-score overtime wins because of a late pick six or whatever. But yeah, I think if they can get Angel Cabrera going, or that team pretty much goes how Angel Cabrera goes. So
I think Big Spring and Elko will be interesting again because I think Elko's going to run the heck out of it with Jake Williams. But I think Big Spring has a good scrappy bunch,
yeah,
so they're
yeah.
not going
I
to lay
don't think
down.
they even knew they were going to make the playoffs. Like going into even with a win, I know Ep is probably of everyone we know is probably the best at prognosticating how a win or loss will affect the power rank. Even he was pretty shocked by Big Spring sneaking in there. There are a lot of the 4A bracket's actually pretty. The 4A bracket is very mid pen heavy, very mid pen heavy.
Hey, how about Camp Hill, Anvil, Cleona? Anvil made it to the district title game last year. And Camp Hill, we talked about them being thin, but they got enough. These are really kind of different types of teams of what they do and with their athletes. So that's like going to be really interesting, like a styles mate fights type of game because you're going to have Camp Hill's going to go in there and throw it around a little bit with Drew Brandstetter, and I think Anvil's going to run up between the tackles a lot. Um, I I wouldn't be surprised if Camp Hill beats them, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, to me with Camp Hill, they've got one of the smallest rosters, in the mid pen. I'd say probably one of the smaller rosters in the mid pen. But the kids that they do have are good football players, especially on the. I mean, Alex Long, I think had he had like 10 catches for 160 yards and 3 touchdowns in the final week of the year. He's a really good wide receiver for Drew Brandstetter. I think it's kind of the opposite of Hershey, right? I feel like they're going to be a team that benefits from it being more of a back and forth kind of gunslinging type game where you force teams to pass, and uh, you know, I'm excited to see what they do there because it'd be cool to see after kind of you don't know what their seed would be if they might be hosting this game if Drew Brandstetter didn't get hurt midway through the year. So
Well, that's kind of local look at the playoffs. Trinity's going to host DeLone Catholic. I know DeLone would love to get them. I just don't think they got enough firepower to do it. So I think they'll rough them up. I think Milton Hershey's going to probably beat Eastern York.
yeah,
They've Eastern York. I'll give them credit. They've played better this year. Altoona, Mifflin County, up the road. Kind of interesting. Altoona should win that game. Finally, Steel High, if you're listening to this, have mercy on Halifax. It's a good year for Halifax. They won more games, man, I think, than they won in the last 5 or 6 years. But man, they got a tough one Saturday.
I don't have all the answers for this for how to fix some of these district playoff issues, but there's got to be a solution to the 1A bracket doing this
It's
every
a
year.
district title game, and Halifax, which is, again, we're not knocking you guys. Heck of a season, but man, this is just a total mismatch.
Yeah, it's nothing against South. It's the it's just a different level of football.
Here's the bright side for Halifax. Like, if you guys go out there and beat them, it's like one of the greatest high school football upsets in the history of history.
Yep.
If you guys go beat them, we're sending like everybody at PennLive to Halifax Monday.
Hey, Francis Ngannou almost beat Tyson Fury, so who knows?
He did beat him, but I know you don't think so, but he beat him.
Yeah.
Just look at their faces. And I like Tyson Fury, but man, he beat him up.
Yeah.
So
But that's got to give hope for almost any team now. You just have to show that picture of Ngannou standing over Fury, be like, this could be us when we go up against Bishop McDevitt or something like that.
yeah. All right. Well, hey, we had a big news. Speaking of Still High, and we're about to dip out of this podcast, Dan. It's going to be one of our shorter ones, but Alex Serby commits to Navy.
That's fun. Isn't that fun? Because anyone who's watched Alex Serby knows he doesn't fit the mold of the old Navy quarterback, right? For however many years, a lot longer than I've been alive. Navy's been the run the option. You go down there as a quarterback, you run. They've kind of switched from that a little bit this year, both Navy and Army, and I guess they've pegged Alex Irby as they want him to be the guy. I mean, and it just in terms of like a program fit, Alex is just a really, really good kid with a good head on his shoulders who I think is going to fit really well in a program like that. I don't think, there's some kids you're like, I don't know if they're going to fit in with kind of the Navy culture. I think Alex Irby's I think he's going to really thrive in sort of that environment and be a leader for that program. And if you're a leader for a Navy program, you're going to be set for life. So
his brother Andrew actually committed to Ohio about 2 weeks ago to play guard. So two really good players there. I'm actually, Dan, looking back through, said we're about a month out from signing days. I think it's December the 20th is the early signing day. So I'm actually going back through all of our rankings to try to get them. It just takes hours. If you guys ever seen those, it's over like 40,000 words on like 350 kids. And I'm kind of going back and trying to watch films. As we have all these other responsibilities as journalists, we're planning a media day next Tuesday for winter. And obviously playoffs and stuff like that we got to kind of attend to. But I'm looking, there's still a lot of really good high school football players in Pennsylvania looking for a place to play at the next level. So coaches, get out there and give them a look because there's some good kids too. But so it's going to be interesting. We're doing a lot of work here, going through all of that stuff, and still some really good kids in the mid-pen. It's playoff time, Dan. I think we got a podcast. We didn't give our random food review from another state today.
no,
But we'll bring that back as a segment.
yeah,
At some point. I'll give you guys a recommendation. Antley's Barbecue, Orangeburg, South Carolina. You pay like $13. You can just eat forever, Dan.
I mean, if we're gonna do this segment, it's got to be a different place next time.
I'm giving you all the good barbecue places, Dan.
We're giving them.
Antley's Barbecue. You go in. It's right there near the campus of South Carolina State University. Shout out to Buddy Pugh, who's retiring over there. But you just sit down, Dan, and you can sit down for like 2 hours, and fried chicken and just amazing barbecue. It's like $15, dude. You can't beat it. That's what I got, Dan. I think we got a podcast. What you think?
I think we got one.
Playoff time, guys. Get out. Check out some of these kids playing. And what will be their last games, and then hopefully push to the state title. PennLive.com. We got a lot of stuff there, from rankings to players to watch and everything else in between, and all your other sports too. I'm Brian Linder. Check me out at Sports by B Linder on Twitter. Dan, how can they find you on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days?
You can follow me at Dan Sostek. Dan_Sostek.
Dan's fully subscribed. He's paying Elon like $16 a month right now, so you should. He's getting all the.
I would rather. There are a lot of subscriptions I'd pay for before
it's like
Twitter
$16 a month. I think you can like inbox him if you pay him $16 a month. Anyway, That's the podcast, guys. We'll see you next time. Thank you, UPMC, for making this podcast happen. PennLive.com. See you guys next week.